Are you from California originally, or?
No, well, I mean, I spent like the kid years in Virginia, but
Oh
I've got
yeah.
family in Massachusetts and Connecticut. So
Okay. There you
yeah.
go. So he dragged you out to California, or you were already out there?
No, I came out. My dad got a gig, and I was like in high school, and so we've been out here. But Shawn and I met in San Diego. So
Okay.
yeah.
Cool. He's like, what? When's you or Shawn gonna run for the mayor? So you're a big deal in San Diego, right? Like you, Chamber of Commerce, I think, right? Is that right?
Yeah, but chambers of commerce are a pretty dime a dozen. No, we have he understands that if he were to run for office, I will run against him. And that's probably the only way. I actually think he would probably be a good elected in the appropriate like avenue, but that's so hard on people. I
No, you couldn't pay me to do it. You
Yeah,
couldn't pay me to do it. No way.
they're so terrible to each other too. Like there's no level of government where you find camaraderie or like
Right.
activity. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it was funny. I was out there in September, and of course, Shawn was doing his like, Man About Town, tour. But everyone we ran into like on the street was like, "Where's Stephanie? What's she doing today?" So
Uh Sean's a live wire and I can be trusted to like keep things calm. So if you spend on like you'll end up in Mexico. So if I'm not
yeah,
like to yeah. So
yeah.
that's why when people are like, oh, where's your keeper? Like,
Where's your adult? Where's your grown up?
exactly. Oh,
All
that's
right. Well, we'll get into it. This is going to be, interesting. I know you've been like in it for years. So feel free to like take this in any direction you want. I have a list of questions that I'm supposed to ask, but we're not obligated to kind of do those.
okay.
So the first thing we need to do though is state your name and role in the Afghan evac movement. It's a movement. Um, yes.
My name is Stefanie Benvenuto, and my role is a very informal one. I am Shawn Van Diver's wife, and therefore a participant in the movement by way of, I don't know, support system.
And what were you doing before August 2021? Were you doing anything on Afghan work at all, or had it even crossed your mind?
We're big news watchers. Like I'm aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
Uh, but before that, I was waiting for Daft to start walking, chasing around my toddler.
Oh yeah, because she was 1.5 or so when all that went down.
One and change. Yeah. Yeah, she was little.
So can you describe what that moment was like when everything kind of went to shit, so to speak? What was it like for you and your family, you
Yeah.
kind of seeing all this?
Um, I mean, I think it's probably similar to a lot of people's experience where it took a while for it to really settle in that like it had gone to shit so irreparably. Like coming out of the context of the when and the how, I think is really like the insult to injury for the folks who have played such a big role in this because we were coming out of COVID. There was kind of a light at the end of the tunnel. And in California, it's very political. It's been all kinds of stuff. We were coming out of the Trump fog and
Mhm.
people were kind of getting their hope back and maybe there's a way out of this. There's like a life after whatever 2020 through, X date has happened. Um, and we had a baby during COVID, we had moved, we hunkered down. And so we were really just starting to get back out into the world. And I remember seeing it on the news and thinking, I mean, they'll right size it. Someone will step in. An adult will show up, surely. So Shawn was like, "Oh, I'm gonna check on Lucky or something." It was literally like he said something in passing. I'm gonna talk to Lucky. I'm gonna check on Lucky. I'm gonna do something. And then we didn't see him for a week. And he like just went full Shawn.
Shawn, you didn't see
Yeah.
Shawn.
We didn't,
Yeah.
so, and I just remember thinking, and we'd see like the updates on the news, and like there was all these things, and little kids, and I was content to be like, oh, okay. Shawn and his band of democracy believers are gonna get in there and like do their thing, and in a couple days he'll tell me how it all shook out. And then it didn't ever shake out. We just kept going. So yeah, so I mean, I remember my experience of it was like watching it on the news, like videos of, and it was hard to watch it with a, do you have kids?
Mm-hmm.
It was hard to watch it just from the perspective of parents, like at their wits' end. There was nothing left for them to do, like passing the babies around in the crowds. And like, I remember looking at my kid and just having that enormous sense of guilt, like, how dare we live these lives that are so safe and relatively, I mean, just how blessed are we, how fortunate. Anyway, so I'm putting together one of those stupid red plastic truck car things for Daphne. And he started walking. Like that was, and Shawn was hunkered down doing his thing. But yeah, that was it. I mean, we were just hoping that it got buttoned up, that somebody stepped in and changed course.
So did he like communicate with you that, hey, I'm gonna go off and you're not gonna hear from me? I mean, or did he just kind of like just
It was, I mean, it was a constant sort of like, I would get these little updates like, oh, Lucky's back in Kabul. Lucky found a truck. Oh, Lucky went radio silent. But I found these other people who have a thing, and like the way that people popped out of the ground, like I have a connection to this, I have a maybe, there's a guy at this gate, like, oh my gosh, I'm remembering all of these weird things now where he's just on the phone with these random people who sound, no offense to the group, I mean, some of these people sounded unhinged with this sort of like cowboy, I've got a guy and a gun and find yellow bridge with the, and then say this word and they'll let you in. And so, and it was just a matter of Shawn was trying to do that. And when Lucky went MIA for a brief time as he was getting somewhere, and so Shawn got wrapped up in other people's stories. And I remember he was working like at night basically, or that because the hours were screwed up. So I was sleeping on the couch because again, this is going to be so temporary. This is so temporary, and I'm so proud of whatever my husband's doing. It seems important. And then yeah, and then
but that must have been difficult for you though, right? Like to have to see your husband just kind of disappear and take care of all these other people, and here you are having, this child that you have to, care for. I mean, that must have been challenging.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think if I don't know how many spouses you guys are interviewing, but I imagine it's not like a special story. And our big kid, who's now almost 16, just thought, and I can still see his face, just how proud he was of what his dad was doing. Because I mean, you could see it on the news. You're watching the flights, you're watching the people jump on and try to hang on to like the wheel, right? And Ryan's watching his dad crazed and on the phone. And I mean, there's still, he wrote all over this door. They couldn't find a whiteboard. So literally like the back of this door is just covered in acronyms and people they're trying to get. So yeah, it was hard. It is hard, but
because it continues, right? Like it's been 3 years, and I imagine things have not changed that much.
No, bless all y'all. I mean, truly, like, but it is, yeah, it's hard. It's hard too to root for, this administration, to root for all kinds of things, but also be really aware of the enormous enormous intentional abdication of responsibility from the federal government, from what little I can understand of like the moving pieces of this. There has been so many steps along this way where I think that folks have been comfortable to let really passionate volunteers kill themselves to do this work because you're happy to do it. There's a phrase in social work that says you can't work harder than your client. Same in politics. Don't work harder than the candidate. And if I were talking to all of you guys, you're working harder than the folks. And you know, this is presumptuous of me to even say, but like, it shouldn't be on the shoulders of all of you and the families that, you know, that depend on you. But I don't know how that changes.
Well, I mean, it is a family thing, right? Like, you know, asked about, like, my wife was 9 months pregnant when, so like, and this is it's not an uncommon story. And I think, you know, you're giving voice to that side of things is really important, because I think the folks who have done this work have the opportunity to tell their stories a lot. And this is an opportunity to say, hey, you know, this affected more than just the people who were behind the camera screen or the TV screen, right? Or the computer screen. That's the word I was looking for.
Whatever. All the screens. There's been a lot of screens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Boy or girl? What'd you end up having?
He's a boy. He's a boy, a very, very boy. Like he
Oh,
is,
okay.
yeah. Yeah. His sister is was eight when this all, or 7 when this all went down. And we had just moved to Atlanta. So I empathize with the idea of going through COVID and then having to jump on this, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Yeah, none of it's special, right? Like I'm sure
Right.
if the spouses got together, honestly, we'd probably flip over a table. Like I have a lot of rage about about because there's like it's all founded in this like deeply conflicting feeling where you are both so proud of the work that your spouse is doing and you know picking a person who cares enough about other people to do this because you all could have said I've done enough now and I'm you know I'm gonna go live my life, I'm gonna go mow the lawn or like whatever sort of peaceful hobby you're gonna take up, you all have done enough but you don't. And so I'm, you know, I'm proud of that. I'm impressed by that. I'm inspired by that. But I'm also sort of wondering when does when do things get back to normal and what does normal even mean anymore? Because my fear for all of you that have been in this for so long, mostly for the people who've been in it for longer than, you know, the OGs, I guess, is that the person that your families get back, I'm worried about who that is. Because this is like high stress,
Yeah.
high drama, high reward, right? Nothing certain, all this stuff. But when you slow it down and you take that adrenaline out and that sort of reward system and these incentives and this camaraderie, and it's quiet and it's just you, and you know that that chapter has closed. Whatever good was done is done. Whatever didn't get done is also just lost now to time. How do you all sit with that? And how do we sit with you in that? Those
Do you
conversations.
think do you think the Shawn that you're getting back now is a different person?
I think, yeah, no, I think there's been very permanent changes and they're not necessarily bad, but I do worry about just the stress that's been placed on everyone.
Mhm.
That something that was happening a lot when like the travel was super intense was he would travel, be in DC, all this stuff's happening, bah, and then he'd come home and promptly get sick. And so
Mm.
everyone's like, "Oh, you're home. Oh, you're laid up in bed." And that makes sense because your body is like, "Oh, I'm safe. I'm gonna I'm gonna just fall apart now and recover. We're gonna recover
But
where
you don't get a break in
no,
that sense.
no, and some of it, I mean, and I imagine it's the same for your family. You like you work around it, right? It's like the other child in the family in our
Mm-hmm.
house is AfghanEvac, right? That's like it's a
Mm-hmm.
whole other entity in our house. And everybody just works around it.
Mm-hmm.
And after this much time, it's baked in. And I think that that's great because there are families that are here and they're safe and they've got a chance, and I'm proud that we have a role in that, but I don't know. It's when it's all done. That's the thing that I don't know. And I've asked Shawn about this and said, how are you going to deal with the quiet? And he was like, I'm looking forward to it. It's what I want. It's like, I bet some part of you wants that.
Now, Shawn and quiet are two words I've never put in the same sentence. So
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, I'm really curious to see what this is. Like, does it ever end?
So, I mean, we've talked a lot about like, Shawn's impact on the impact of Shawn, excuse me, the impact of the evacuation on Shawn, which subsequently impacted your family. But do you see yourself as kind of a part of this work in some way?
I mean, in so much as we keep him alive, yes. I find that like every once in a while I'll stumble across a person really organically who has a need of Afghan evac resources or expertise. And I get a little obsessed with that person.
Mm.
Like the tailor that I deeply love up the street. His mom and brother were stuck in Afghanistan. He's going, I find that I'm just like those people that I know frustrate Shawn, where I'm like, did you talk to him? Did you call him? And he's like, I have so many people on me, but you have to call the tailor. Like,
Yeah.
he has 2 kids and they're going to go back to Afghanistan. And where are we? And so, yeah, I mean, I think I'm annoying and counterproductive sometimes when I'm like, I also have a person now. And like, we will move heaven and earth for my person because I've
Yeah.
so much has happened. But I mean, no, I'm not in the middle of the Afghan evac stuff at all.
But you're in this interesting space where, on one hand, yes, you're not like in the room doing the stuff that Shawn is doing, but on the other hand, I think a lot of us feel like the country's moved on, right? And it's in so much as Afghanistan is this part of the American history, it's now just it's in a partisan or politicized thing, and kind of people understand that it was a big mess and oh, wasn't that terrible. But you kind of sit in between these two worlds, and I wonder what that must feel like, right? Because you could see you want it to move on, but it's not.
Oh man, yeah. There's moments where I feel pretty guilty about it, but like, oh yeah, there's times where I just want to be like, it's done, dude. It's done. Like, and even in the debate, like
Yeah.
seeing Trump beat Biden with it was like, oh, all of this for this moment. And I know it's so much bigger than that. Like, I want to be very clear, but yeah, yes, there are. It's hard. That's really hard. Because especially watching like people that you love sacrifice themselves over and over. I mean, professionally, there's been real impacts for Shawn, which has real impacts for us.
Mhm.
Um, Planning even my own career and things I was gonna like, yeah. The job I'm in now, I only took because I became convinced that we were moving toward a single income household. Shawn was not going to be able to work. Like, it was just not going to be sustainable for him to have a job. And so I took a risky move into a consulting role that I never would have done if not for the pressure of AfghanEvac on the family. But like we wouldn't have been able to afford to stay in San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there are things like that where you watch all these things happen, and on the one hand, you're eager to see the end, but you also that end is really unknown. And the reality that I have to always ground myself in is that that end means one thing for us in this tiny piece of the world, but it means so much for, the thousands of families that are still left in purgatory. And we all sacrifice, whatever version of life we thought we were going to have today in 2024 for the hope that that gets resolved at some point. But I don't know what the deadline for that is anymore.
Do you regret that Shawn did this?
No, no. I have had to process a lot of things about it. I will always remember there was an AfghanEvac like dinner something, and I think this was before everything was like streamlined, back when there was like 5 million groups, and maybe there still are 5 million groups. I don't know, but there was a bunch of organizations and names and people, and there was a dinner, and anyway, I was sitting next to somebody, and this was early on. She said so and so's wife left him because he was
Mm.
so obsessed with this. She's like, isn't that terrible? And I was like, I mean, and that's always stayed with me because it's like, I don't know that the experience of the spouse can possibly register for the folks who are in the work,
Mm.
like to the full extent, and vice versa. I can't fully appreciate the conversations you guys are having and all of these other things because like that sort of like unending trauma of like, I'm stuck, help, my kid, my mom's sick, my like, I can't imagine. But I also don't know that there's been enough time where people have slowed down and thought about the spouses and the kids who are cobbling together a life around a person who has their eyes somewhere else. And rightfully so, but like we didn't ask that. There wasn't a
Mm.
discussion where everybody said, you know what? This is it. Let's go. Buckle up, everyone. This is an adventure we're going to go on, and we're going to see where it goes. Just sort of unfolded in a way that you're like, man, I'm proud, but I don't remember consenting. And I don't remember wanting this. I remember wanting other things. Um, yeah. But then, and honestly, the stuff with like President Biden called Shawn, that was cool. I don't care about any of that. The thing that makes this all okay is that, I see families who have come over. We've met them. I hear about them. We have friends who engage in this now too. Like our friends who, it's nice. Anytime someone's like getting rid of a couch, the first thing they say is, are there any Afghans who want a couch? Like, is there, we teamed up with this family we met. We're making sure they have all of their car seats and stuff because they didn't have any car seats when they got here. Like, and there's this really nice organic thing. But it's nowhere near what I think most of the spouses have been through. And just for that one woman to be like so obviously determined to be an asshole, like, oh no, she must suck if she left. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. For a year and a half, I felt like I was talking to a wall,
Yeah.
right? And a friend of mine, actually a couple of friends of ours, call Shawn Mr. Shawn because anytime you engage with Shawn on social media, you're flooded with people asking you to help get them to Mr. Shawn so that they can get their P2, P1, like their paperwork is, and it's just, I don't think, it's easy for anybody to understand what this has been like on the other side. But I also don't think it's easy to understand what you guys have gone through. So it's hard. We're all figuring it out.
Well, it sounds like similar to I guess the feelings that active duty military spouses feel,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like I imagine this is like a deployment, and
Hmm.
life goes on for everybody else, and you're kind of stuck in this environment of worry and wonder and, unsurety. Is that the word? Whatever,
Yeah, yeah. Let's
whatever
not think too hard about
the
it.
word is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that resonates with you, or what you think about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I've thought a lot about that. I think that probably is the closest comparison, but it'd be like if somebody secretly agreed to deploy and then
Mm,
packed up and said, "I'm going now," and you'd have to be like, "I'm sorry,
hmm
you're what?" So there's just some of that. And it is some of like these I hope this is limited and it's not like an across the board feeling for the spouses, but for me there's an element at times, and it's something that we have to work on, of like you're experiencing this on your own. Like
mm.
this is a life-changing thing, and I've heard so many people say that it has changed the direction of their life. And I fully believe that, and it makes so much sense to me. But it didn't change the direction of my life, but and I don't know what that means for us. Like I can't go with him on that. I
All
don't,
right.
and frankly, I don't want to. That is not the kind of person I am. Uh,
Are
but
there other families in San Diego that have gone through this together that you have like communicated with? No?
no.
It must be isolating as
Oh
well.
yeah. Oh yeah, it is. I mean, yeah, it is. But you get inundated with this like, how great is it that this has happened? I'm like, oh, shut up. Like, he's been gone for 10 days, man. I have no idea where my shoes are, and I forgot the kids' show and tell thing today, and the big one has a doctor's appointment tomorrow that I don't know if we're going to be able to make it to. Like, shut up. But,
Yeah.
you know, that's and some of that stuff's parenting. So it's hard to tell because I think, and this goes back to like the context of how this all got started. The big kid I did not birth. Daphne is the only child that I have birthed. And that happened during COVID. She's the
hmm
only toddler I've raised. And so it's hard to divorce what was weird because of COVID,
hmm
what's weird because kids are weird, what's hard because of AfghanEvac, and what's hard because raising kids and having a family is hard. I don't know. My entire context for like what it's supposed to be is very skewed. And I also married a very strange, very wonderful, but very bizarre person. Like to say that I was signed up for a normal sort of ride was never the
hmm
case, right? He was always going to be 1,000 miles an hour full throttle. Um, but yeah, so I don't know what parts of that was isolating because it's isolating to be a mom. I don't know what's isolating because I don't know. I'm not sure. And I don't want to prescribe more bad to anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, did, did you ever ask him to pull it back?
I'm sure at some point, I'm sure at some point I got bold enough to be like, too much, too much, man. Um, yeah, because I can recall now that there was like some negotiations around days being gone. Like, uh, and
Seems to be like it was a blur though.
yeah, I mean, because it was one of those things where like our marriage went through, continues to go through a lot of hard times because he's always traveled. So, like, I don't want to say that that's necessarily a problem, but it's hard because, like I said, there's so much of his brain and his heart is wrapped up in something that is so separate from us.
hmm
right? And it's happening a world away. Closest thing is like, yes, every once in a while there's a smattering of families in San Diego or in El Cajon, but for the most part it's DC or it's across an ocean or something. So yeah, I remember saying like, oh, too much travel, like we need you here. And so we landed on, it was like, okay, maximum travel of 10 days a month. And I remember telling my girlfriends that, like, oh, well, it's like 10 days a month now. And everyone sort of looked at me like, if that's how you do marriage, man. But it's hard to have a marriage when you're not in the same world.
Yeah.
Like, you might as well live on the moon, right? It, but that takes work. And again, how much of that is AfghanEvac and the commitment of this very wild ride? And how much of it is just marriage is hard? I don't know.
Well, yeah. I mean, I had been in the human rights space for a while prior to this happening, and I see people, and I'm not saying that this is Shawn, but I have seen people's families really that unless you really work at it, really struggle. And so I made a commitment to my family to really kind of like put that priority first, because and we have our difficulties as well, right? I think everybody has. So I 10 days a week, or 10 days a month, I think is an interesting negotiation, and I'm glad it's working out for you guys.
I hear this and be like, some months it's 5 days, and
Yeah, yeah.
moral of the story is like that's where we landed as a like
Right.
this is where I'm not gonna lose my shit every day. But
Well,
yeah,
and he's probably telling himself and telling you, and he probably believes that this is temporary, right? Like,
yeah, yeah. Well,
right?
oh my God,
He told
yeah.
me it was going to end in October of 2021. He's like, I'm going to wind it all down. So,
I recently had to say I appreciate this because he was giving me another timeline. This is the timeline for the wind down. I appreciate it, but I just don't believe you. Like, no offense, like I love you. It's not like I think you're lying, but I think you've been
yeah.
wrong every other time. So I just, and that's hard too to be like, it's just a blank check of time. Like,
Hmm.
okay. But I do appreciate you saying that about the human rights space and other families because it does make me feel a little bit less like I might be insane because I don't have context for like comparison for anywhere else.
Well, you hit the nail on the head when you said that, like, the work that is done takes a toll on people, and it impacts people's lives. I mean, and that it impacts people's lives, and then it ripples out to their families. So,
Yeah.
um, the work is really important. I'm just thinking of a few people who it just didn't work out, and you just you just hope that you've built a relationship at a kind of foundation strong enough that
Yeah. Right.
you're able to make it through.
Right. I mean, I've got to imagine there's more folks who had to make some decisions around their family dynamics spread throughout this whole Afghanistan
Hmm.
experience. It just wouldn't make any sense otherwise because it's gnarly. And and to your point earlier, when it feels like so much of the world has moved on and you're still throwing everything you've got emotionally and intellectually at this, yeah, it's hard for a spouse to understand that sometimes. And then I bet it's frustrating on your end. And that's hard. That's tough.
That's why I think the military spouse comparison is so apt. I recently read an article or a post by this military spouse, and her husband is on a submarine, and he goes 300 days underwater sometimes, and it's like with no contact, you know. And this is a person that is in a community isolated from other people who have the same experience. No one walks through life not understanding the weight that she carries, and it's the same for our families.
Yeah.
I mean, children too. Not, I mean, you said your son was 14, 13 or 14 at the time, I imagine. So able to kind of understand what was happening.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
1-year-old probably didn't understand why, daddy's where's daddy? The 15 days a month or whatever it is.
She she is noticeably like cracked out with joy when her whole family is together,
Mm.
because it's not a common occurrence. And like my work often, like I'll pack the days full when Shawn's in town. Like that's when I have my nighttime events. That's when I'm a little bit more scattered because I've got another parent to rely on. So like anytime we're all together without fail, she's 4. My whole family is here. My whole family. And she's so happy. And it took me a while to be like, oh, this is like legitimately special for her. And that's, yeah.
But what does that do to you? You know?
Oh, that kills me.
Yeah.
But, you know, we, it's those things where it's like you can't dwell, because what are you going to do? So I certainly don't want to be the next person who has left their husband just to be referred to as the dick who couldn't hang through Afghanistan.
I would say I think what the sentiment you were sharing is probably shared by a lot of people. I think a lot of people in this space understand um, how hard it is. People who know should understand.
Yeah. Well, I I think it remains to be seen. Lord, if if this is, year 3 in a saga of, 9 years, we'll have to talk again at the end of 9
Yeah.
years, because I don't know what that looks like. But, I things are a little less chaotic now. When it started, it was just mass chaos, right? Just
Yeah.
there was no rhyme or reason, and there was like interpersonal drama. And and I'm like, I have no idea who these people are. Like, what? You don't make any sense. Like, what are you saying? And and he's like saying like these big names. And I'm like, there's no chance Anthony Blinken like knows who you are, dude. Like, you sound delusional.
My mom, for a year and a half after Afghanistan blew up, was like, "Yeah, okay, Chris. Like, sure."
Yeah, and I feel bad, but like me and my parents were sort of like, oh gosh, he really is just going for it, isn't he? And then every time something big happens, you're like, oh wow,
Yeah.
that's pretty serious. That's pretty like legit. But also, um, you know, it's deserved. You guys have done an enormous amount of work and made so many impacts. But I yeah, I keep hoping that the way that we've sort of hit this level of stability and a little bit more predictability and less bomb throwing unexpectedly, it's probably not a good phrase,
I mean,
makes me think that maybe we are going toward a situation where things can be boxed up and handed back to the government. Like I don't,
yeah.
but also why would they take it? Like, why
I mean,
wouldn't
is there anything that you want the government to know, like along those lines? Like, what would you, if you could sit down and talk to, not that they would listen, right? Biden or Trump.
right?
What would you tell them?
You have no fucking idea how lucky you guys got. I mean, however bad this was, whatever moments that we all watched the tragedy unfold, if not for a bunch of adult Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts who really just believed in the cause, right? And believed in the promises. And like, it really is so sincere that it almost strikes you as cheesy when you hear it sometimes. But like, if not for people with that level of integrity, who knows what we would have seen happen? And who knows what the ripple effects of that would have been? So it drives me crazy that I get the sense that the federal government, and again, with my limited understanding, I don't know the ins and outs, have not said, you all have done enough. And this isn't your job, most of you. So thank you. We, the professionals, we're going to do this now. We're going to take it all over and learn the lessons that you all have so readily made available. But
Do you think that they're not doing that because they're getting free labor, or they just don't want to, or like what is preventing them? Because I think that sentiment is shared.
I think it's easy when you're in something as regimented as the federal government, where there's a lot of good reasons to say no to everything, that when you get a bunch of like do-gooders doing a fairly decent job, like, just let them. I'll just maybe, don't look too closely and they'll like keep going. Because I do hear like in passing these conversations like, oh, and state's gonna do this now and so is gonna do this now. And it's like 3 years in, urgency is past. Why would they do it?
Mm-hmm.
Why take it on now? I just have this. I don't. I just don't really believe that that's going to happen. But I would like for it to. And Lord have mercy if Trump wins, and all this gets boxed up and put, in a government storage unit. So like they're not gonna carry on the work. I don't think. I'd love to be wrong. How does everybody process that? So I don't know. I'm not sure.
Is there anything that you would want well, two questions, I guess, both on family, kind of switching gears back a little bit.
Yeah.
What would you like your family to know, the extended family that you have, or whatever? And then what would you like other families who are in this space to know?
For my family, for our family, I think what I want them to know is mostly that the kids are doing really well. Because this whole process, I can't tell you that I know how it ends or how it got started. I'm proud of our families for like stepping up in the way that they did. Like they all donated early on and said nice things. But ultimately the question is, you know, the things that really matter, which is how our kids are doing. They're doing well, and it's not for a lack of effort on my part and on Shawn's part, really trying to balance all that. And so I think that that's what tells me that this is all okay. Um, they've not lacked any love or attention or anything like that, but it has been hard. What I would want other families in this place to know, we really should have we really should have made a space for the spouses or like the support networks to like be able to talk to each other. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's like that would have been so obvious. um what I want them to know is that, I mean, you guys are gonna be remembered for this work for a long time, and rightfully so. But I don't think that diminishes. I'm not a person who needs my name in writing or anything like that. That doesn't speak to me. But I do hope that that the story of the families that stood behind everybody get told to some degree. And I don't know what that'll look like, but I don't think that it's because you guys haven't made space for it. I think it's just there's been a lot of things on fire. So I hope that those families just know that this can't last forever. Nothing does. But one day those stories will all come to light. And, I think in the end it'll be a net positive, and we'll all have a lot to be proud of and to be grateful for. But that day's TBD with the wind down constantly moving.
Yeah, as we're talking, I think a spousal support or partner support network probably should have been done.
Yeah, doesn't that make sense?
Yeah, why didn't we think of that?
Well, we were busy trying to feed all of you guys while you were on Zooms for 18 hours.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, and I think the other thing is, like you said, the timeline keeps moving, right? Like it's one thing you brought up the point, like it's like someone got deployed or secretly volunteered to get deployed for an unknown period of time. I think everybody thought, well, in the
Right.
next 6 months it's going to be over, right? And we'll all kind of like wrap it up and it'll be good.
Yeah.
So there was never, even on our side, right? There's never any like long-term planning. Like we tried, at least in my coalition, we tried to do some like long-term planning and it just didn't work out. Because I think no one fully understands the even Shawn and I don't understand like how like the length of this.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, and it's hard to know how to be helpful when the
Hmm.
only thing that we all have is this shared level of uncertainty, right? Like,
Yeah.
do you need somebody to like just sit and vent with you? Do you need, I don't know. But
Do you interact much with the Afghan community in San Diego?
no, I mean, my tailor, who I believe is in Afghanistan right now. No, but like I've been to some iftars with Shawn, and there's a Afghan um Afghan shelter in Tijuana. So we met the lady who runs that, but no, not me personally.
Is there anything that you want that community to know in general, either Afghans here or, back in or anywhere, I suppose, really?
No, I am just so sorry to them. For the more I learn about what they've had to endure waiting, and you'd think I would know all of it because my roommate husband doesn't shut up. But the more I learn about sort of the structural thing that was built that always set this up to happen, right? The way this whole thing was designed and managed, and like, just, I was young when we went to Afghanistan. I didn't understand all of those pieces. The more I learn about that, the more just deeply, deeply sad I am about how we failed them and those families. And I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
loan them Shawn and you.
Shawn, yeah, Shawn can do the work for both of us.
No,
No.
no, no, no.
What about the broader public? Because we've talked a bit about today, that Afghanistan has moved. And I'm not trying to lead this question, but I'm just going to say these things, and you can take
Yeah.
it for what it is. Right? The broader American public feels like we've moved on from Afghanistan, and what do you want that? What do you want the American people to know? The question that Shawn has: what would you like the American people to know? Which is very like patriotic, but like what do you want like people in? I'm in Irondequoit, New York, right now, like very Americana. You know, what do you want these people to know? If you could tell them, if you could walk into someone's kitchen and say, "Hey, this is my story. What would you want? What would you tell them?"
I have a deep suspicion that every major inflection point in America's history has left out the story of the volunteers and the people who would not accept a bleak outcome or a sad outcome or one that does not meet their moral expectations. I'm beginning to wonder if you guys are just part of a long list of folks who have
Mm.
stepped in when the folks whose names are on history books or, big statues or whatever were content to just let something happen. And I think that if we were to look at the stories of what all of you have done and the families that have supported you have sat through, you'd find a lot to be hopeful for. But to just blindly assume that things turn out okay because America is America, wave your stupid flag, is so naive and so lazy.
Mm.
It really does them a disservice, and it does the country and its history a disservice. So I guess I want them to know that there's some really impressive people still playing the game right now, and you'll probably never know their names.
That's, I mean, both inspiring and also kind of sad. To think that, the thousands of people that we've worked with and their families will,
Oh my gosh.
you know, I mean, it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
What you said reminded me of, I don't remember where I heard this, but it stuck with me. And it's more so in like the political environment right now than anything else. And someone said, "No one's coming to save us. We have to do this ourselves." And I just think, the people that did the AfghanEvac work, the families that stuck, the families that were there for a long the ride and did the work. Um, you know, we are the ones who are saving us in this moment, and
Yeah.
I think what you said kind of fits into that. So that's really interesting.
Hey, if I could take the cast of characters that I've learned about or met along the way on this journey and just reposition y'all to save what's left of the democracy, I would do it. And I would be pretty confident that you guys would be successful. But yeah, no,
Well, we'll see. We'll see. That's, democracy evac, right? That's the next.
we're getting on a spaceship.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I know
Thank
that this
you.
could have been this was challenging at times, and I hope that you're able to kind of,
Yeah.
take a breath afterwards and ground yourself, because it's really hard. Um, so having to kind of rehash some of the thoughts is
Yeah.
unpleasant, I imagine.
Oh, it's all right. But thank you for the space. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I don't know what I'm supposed to do next. If we just hit the,
I'm gonna stop the recording. That feels
okay,
are you sure I want to stop?
there you go.
Mm.